All right, let's talk about AWS CloudTrail. We're going to treat it like the ultimate detective for your AWS account, because really, that's what it is. It's the service that's always watching, making sure you have a record of every single action to keep things secure, compliant, and running smoothly.
So picture this. It's the classic nightmare scenario, right? You log in one morning and a critical production database is just gone. Or maybe you check your bill and it's suddenly shot through the roof. You start to panic. You need answers, and you need them like yesterday. The questions are always the same. Who did this? What did they do? And when did it happen?
And this, right here, is where our detective comes in. AWS CloudTrail is basically the black box flight recorder for your entire AWS setup. It meticulously records every single action taken by any user, any role, or any AWS service. It bundles them up into things called events, giving you a single undeniable source of truth for everything happening in your account. So here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll dig into this idea of CloudTrail as your account's black box. Then we'll dissect what an event actually is. After that, we'll look at the three main ways you can record all this data, check out some advanced analysis tools, and finally, wrap up with why all this visibility is such a game changer. Okay, let's start with that core concept. Thinking of CloudTrail as your account's indispensable black box. So think about it. Every single thing you do in AWS leaves a digital footprint. Every click in the management console, every command you run in the CLI, every API call your apps make with an SDK, all of it leaves a trace. CloudTrail is the service that's there to capture every one of those footprints, making sure nothing, and I mean nothing, goes unnoticed. It doesn't matter how an action was taken. If it happened, CloudTrail saw it. So how does it record all these footprints? Well, they get captured as events. But here's the thing. Not all events are created equal. CloudTrail actually sorts them into different categories, which is super helpful for focusing on what you actually care about. First up, you have management events. These are the big ones, what we call control plane operations. Think of these as any change to the blueprint of your infrastructure. Somebody launching a new EC2 instance, tweaking a security group, or changing an access policy. These events tell you who is fundamentally changing the state of your resources. Then there are data events. Now, these are the high-volume actions that happen on or in your resources. They're not about changing the blueprint, but about how that blueprint is being used, like someone downloading a file from an S3 bucket or an application calling a Lambda function. And here's a key point. Because this can generate a massive amount of log data, these are actually turned off by default. You have to opt in to see them. Next, we have network activity events. These are a bit more specialized. They give you a window into what's happening inside your private network. They log API calls made from within your virtual private cloud, your VPC, out to different AWS services. This is absolutely critical for tracking internal traffic and making sure your private resources stay private. And finally, there are insights events. Now, this is where CloudTrail gets really smart. It actually uses machine learning to figure out what normal API activity looks like for your account. It establishes a baseline, and when it sees something weird, like a sudden spike in API calls or a jump in error rates, it generates an insights event. It's basically an early warning system for trouble. Okay, so we know CloudTrail is recording all these different kinds of events, but how do you actually access them? How do you store them? Well, CloudTrail gives you three main tools to get the job done. Let's break these three down. First, you've got the event history. Think of this as your account's short-term memory. It gives you a free 90-day searchable view of your management events, perfect for quick what just happened lookups. For anything longer term, you'll want to create a trail. This is your permanent archive. It sends all your event logs to an S3 bucket, and you decide how long to keep them, which is essential for compliance. And finally, for the really deep, complex investigations, you have CloudTrail Lake. It's a managed data lake built for this stuff, letting you run powerful SQL queries across up to 10 years of data. And this is so important to remember. Every single AWS account gets that 90-day event history enabled by default. It's on right now in your account, whether you've touched CloudTrail or not. It's a baseline level of visibility that AWS just gives to everyone for free. But just storing logs is only half the story. The real power comes from turning all that raw data into actual, actionable intelligence. And that's where CloudTrail's advanced features really come to play. So using CloudTrail Lake is actually surprisingly straightforward. You start by creating something called an event data store. Then, and this is super cool, you can pull in not just your CloudTrail logs, but also activity logs from your own on-premise apps or even third-party sources. Once all that data is in one place, you can unleash complex SQL queries to hunt for patterns, troubleshoot problems, or do some serious security forensics. To really get a feel for CloudTrail insights, imagine this scenario. Let's say your account normally sees, I don't know, maybe 20 S3 bucket deletions per minute. Then, all of a sudden, that number jumps to an average of 100. Whoa. Is that a runaway script? Is it an attacker? Insights doesn't wait for you to find that needle in a haystack. It brings that anomaly right to your attention. The process behind it is really simple, but incredibly powerful. CloudTrail is constantly analyzing your management events, learning the unique rhythm of your account to build that baseline. The moment it detects a major deviation from that baseline, either in call volume or error rates, it flags it with an insights event. This is huge because it shifts you from being reactive to proactive, helping you catch potential problems before they blow up into major incidents. And all of this brings us back to the core value of CloudTrail. This isn't just some logging service you turn on and forget about. It is a foundational pillar for any well-managed and secure cloud environment. When you look at why people use it, the value really breaks down into three main areas. For security, it's your go-to tool for incident response and forensics. For compliance, it's what gives you that immutable audit trail that auditors for things like PCI, HIPAA, or GDPR demand. And for operations, it's an absolute lifesaver for troubleshooting, letting you find the exact API call that broke your application. So if you boil it all down, the most crucial point is this. CloudTrail provides the audit trail you need to definitively answer those critical questions for any action in your account. Who did it? What did they do? When did they do it? And where did they do it from? With that information, you have what you need to truly secure, audit, and manage your environment. Ultimately, CloudTrail gives you a complete, unfiltered look at everything happening in your account. And that really just leaves one final, interesting question. Now that you have the power to see everything, what will you discover?